I'm Teisha Bader, and in the news, International Holocaust Remembrance Day, designated by the United Nations General Assembly back in 2005 to be held every year on January the 27th, which is the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz-Birkenau. On this day, the UN urges every member state to honor the victims of the Holocaust and to develop educational programs to help prevent such an atrocity from ever happening again. Well, one of the central and leading institutions in the world that is committed and devoted to Holocaust education and Holocaust remembrance every single day is Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center in Jerusalem. And we are fortunate enough to have the chairman of Yad Vashem, Dani Dayan, joining us now from Yad Vashem in Jerusalem on JBS. Dani, thank you so much.
Thank you, Teisha, for having me. It's always great to be back in JBS.
Yes, thank you. And many of you may be familiar with Dani. He was the Consul General to New York from Israel for many years. We've had him on JBS in that regard. And now that you're chairman of Yad Vashem, just from this past August, such an honor. Mazal tov, first of all. And
thank you.
Before we talk about the critical work Yad Vashem does, can you just talk a little bit about this new role that you have and how it has impacted you on a personal level?
You know, Teisha, when I was Consul General to New York, I had the great privilege to represent the Jewish state to the largest Jewish community in the world. Some would say to the capital of the world, New York, although I think the capital of the world is obviously Jerusalem. But I wasn't sure I will be able to find, upon my return to Israel, a mission of the same caliber. There are really not many missions that can compare to that one. But no doubt, chairing Yad Vashem, leading Yad Vashem is one of the few that really give me a sense of mission, a sense of service. It's a demanding position, not only in the long hours that I work, but I was never scared about that. But it also, you know, is demanding on an emotional level. But I believe that is vital for the Jewish people. I couldn't imagine really a more, not only exciting, but a more significant mission.
Well, I was thinking about that, Dani, because I was thinking about how you must come into work every day. And, you know, for those of us who have visited Yad Vashem, it's very powerful. It's really heavy. It is a heavy, powerful, very sobering experience. And I'm just thinking how you walk into that environment every day and do the work that you do.
Well, you know, I am a person that always has been very conscious of Jewish history. In some sense, I live Jewish history. And for me, I understand very well that you know, Judaism in many senses is about remembering. Most of our festivals, most of our Chagim, whether it is Pesach, whether it's Hanukkah or Teisha B'Av on a different level, are about remembering historical events. So I don't believe there is Jewish continuity without remembering. For sure, we have an obligation to remember the 6 million of our brethren that were massacred in the Holocaust, but not only us. We have also an obligation to make the world remember them. And that gives me the power, the stamina to do that. Really the sense of responsibility, of historical responsibility, something that becomes even more important now that unfortunately the number of survivors for natural reasons is dwindling. Our work becomes on one hand more challenging, but on the other hand, more vital.
And I want to talk about some of the educational programs that you have at Yad Vashem in a moment. But one thing I really think Yad Vashem does so incredibly well, and it really is difficult, is to convey the magnitude of the atrocity of the Shoah, of the Holocaust, and at the same time, make it a very personal, tangible experience for people. Because you can walk in and be just overwhelmed by that number, 6 million, and just think, well, I can't relate to this. It's too much. But at Yad Vashem, there are so many resources that allow for people to connect to each person. And the name Yad Vashem means a place and a name, right? Yad Vashem, and giving each person a name, and each person, each victim, and each visitor a chance to connect.
That's correct,
how do you do that?
That's correct, Teisha. You know, I always quote the phrase that the Holocaust is not one assassination of 6 million people. It's 6 million assassinations of one person each. And I think about, you know, this young Jewish girl, let's say in Bialystok in Poland, that was crammed with her family into their shul and set afire. I am convinced that in her last moments, she expected us, the Jewish people, to know her name, her face, who her parents were, who was their aspirations in life. And we do exactly that. We are obsessive, and I'm not ashamed of the word obsessive in this context. We are obsessed in our Hall of Names to collect individual names of the Jews that were murdered in the Shoah. We succeeded with amazing adventures to gather to this point 4.8 million names. We are still, I hope we are continuing to do it. We have obviously the pages of testimony that people of all the world have registered in Yad Vashem. And you know, Teisha, in Auschwitz, we have the Israeli block, the Israeli pavilion in Auschwitz that Yad Vashem is responsible of. And we have there a huge book of names in which you can really see and touch the name of your family that perished. I intend to replicate it, to put another one in Jerusalem. It doesn't make sense that we have it in Auschwitz, but not in Jerusalem. And another one that will travel the world. So persons, Jews and non-Jews all over the world, in New York, in Moscow, in Buenos Aires, will be able to feel that sensation that is, believe me, unique.
That's incredible. And I'll just tell you quickly that the last time I was at Yad Vashem, I put in the name of my great-grandmother, who I'm named after, and a page of testimony came up. I wasn't expecting it to be there. One of her sons who survived the Holocaust filled it out, and seeing that in black and white was so powerful.
Yeah, may I use your service, Teisha, in order to call upon every person in your audience that is a descendant of survivors or know and has names of their family that perished during the Holocaust to register the names in Yad Vashem. Also, names of survivors are important.
Absolutely. So you speak about remembering and educating, especially our youth, next generation, making sure that, especially as you said, with dwindling numbers of Holocaust survivors who are dying of old age, of natural causes, this has become more and more urgent. Can you talk about, I know you've just launched a new initiative, Leadership Academy, and you have many other programs. Tell us about that.
Indeed, we just inaugurated the Miriam and Sheldon Educational Leadership Academy in our School of Education, Holocaust Education in Yad Vashem. We invest huge efforts in educating youngsters, but not only youngsters, also influencers. My focus now in the coming years will be to educate diplomats and politicians all over the world on Holocaust facts, first of all, and the legacy, the significance. I see the rising anti-Semitism in the world, and I think that is knowing about, understanding the Holocaust is in some sense an antidote to current anti-Semitism. We have, even when I was a consul general in New York, and I refrained from participating in lobbying for domestic legislation, which a foreign diplomat is not supposed to do. I made an exception when Representative Caroline Maloney presented the Never Again bill fostering Shoah education. I stood with her in the podium in a press conference calling on Congress to legislate. Now we will try to use that same Never Again bill in order to enhance at all levels Holocaust education all over the United States and beyond.
That's wonderful. And what do you see from young people? What kind of results and impact do you see when young people, students in Israel, for example, receive this education and around the world, as far as helping to educate them and also making them more aware of hate in general and how to fight hate in the world and racism for that matter?
Yeah, you're right. Israelis, even youngsters, are aware of the Shoah. Obviously, we have in Yom HaShoah, the country comes to a standstill. We have many projects in school and in informal education level, that extracurricular education that make aware of the Holocaust, even though if we would expect a deeper knowledge. But in the world, outside of Israel, is a completely different story. The level of ignorance in which we see all over the world is staggering. People cannot name even one extermination or concentration camp, etc. So there is a lot of work that we have to do, and we do. We do in our International School of Holocaust Education. We reach out to 5 continents. Not long ago, I was in New York in November. I had the opportunity to meet the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, and I suggested him to launch a program of educating the staff of the United Nations as agencies on the Holocaust significance. He agreed, and you are working on that. And the fact that I believe that in a few days, the General Assembly will adopt a resolution fostering Holocaust remembrance and condemning Holocaust denial, I think it will be a boost for our efforts that I started in Turtle Bay in November.
No, that's wonderful. And I actually just read also that you're partnering with the Museum of Jewish Heritage in New York to make the pages of testimony to widen the access. How is that going to work?
Well, yes, we have signed an agreement with Jewish Gen, which is part of the Museum of Jewish Heritage. I visited the museum when I was in New York. We partnered with them. I also visited the Holocaust Museum in Washington, and we are going to strengthen our partnership. I believe that in the coming years, under my leadership, Yad Vashem will be much more decentralized, will be, in order to feel and understand the Shoah, the Holocaust, you will not have to come to Yerushalayim, although we would love to host everyone in Yerushalayim, but we will reach them in the places they reside all over the world.
That's really so important. And Dani, I know almost every dignitary that comes to Israel, that visits Israel, be it an ambassador, a president, prime minister, celebrities for that matter, Yad Vashem is one of the places they come. They come to the Western Wall, the Kotel in Jerusalem, and they come to Yad Vashem.
Definitely.
What is that experience like for you to sort of see them seeing all of this for the first time, and how do you feel it impacts them in general?
You know, Teisha, it's not only about the first time. The first dignitary I hosted was the then Chancellor of Germany, Angela Merkel. It was her 6th visit to Yad Vashem, and you still could see without any doubt how moved, how touched she was. At the end, she asked for 15 minutes to be alone, completely alone in the museum, even without the security detail to reflect in what she experienced. And when she came out there, I saw very clearly how moved she was. So even visitors that come many times to Yad Vashem cannot fail to feel that. You know, I tell all the dignitaries after they leave the museum and the different exhibitions, I tell them that there are many lessons that one can learn from the Holocaust, from the Shoah. My lessons are mainly two, or our lessons in Yad Vashem are mainly two. And one is the vital importance of the existence of a Jewish, independent, robust, secure state in the land of our ancestors. I remind them of the ship, the St. Louis, that wandered from dock to dock, from port to port in America and the Caribbean, in Latin America, and was refused entry. And the refugees from Germany and Austria and other places had to return to Europe to be massacred there. The existence of Israel is the guarantee that there will be no other St. Louis wondering, that the safe haven for Jews will always exist. And the second is that never underestimate anti-Semitism. We have the experience that the world in the 30s of the previous century lacked. And that is that we know that anti-Semitism, even when it is small, can grow to monstrous dimensions. Therefore, it has to be confronted forcibly, immediately, and with determination. That is my message to the leaders of the world.
So with International Holocaust Remembrance Day coming up, and this date was set by the UN, specifically at the United Nations, how would you like to see this day commemorated? What would you be your ideal vision for this?
Well, you know, first of all, I am glad that it is being commemorated. 20 years ago, that was not the case. The year after year would go by, and no commemoration, no official day of commemoration of the Holocaust existed. So the fact that today there is an International Holocaust Remembrance Day is remarkable, and it is very important. And there are different ways to mark the date. One thing that I see this day, and that is regrettable. On one hand, the good news is that, you know, Teisha, Holocaust denial as such is marginal. In the social media obviously exists, because every lunatic phenomena appears in the social media, but no serious person, maybe except for Iranians or other, will not deny that gas chambers existed and 6 million Jews were massacred. What we see and we are worried about are two different things. It's distortion of the Holocaust. Nations saying, of course, 6 million Jews were murdered, but my people, the citizens of my country, were all of them righteous among the nations. Well, wrong. There's in every country, the Nazi Germans had collaborators. And the other thing that we see, unfortunately, these days, rampant is trivialization of the Holocaust with comparisons of COVID passes to yellow stars, etc. And the most horrendous form of both trivialization and distortion is those anti-Semites that compare Israel to Nazi Germany, which is totally outrageous. So we have a lot of work to do still, and we are determined to succeed.
Definitely many challenges, and you brought up the, you know, COVID connection using images from the Holocaust. How specifically to that, how do you answer that? How do you address that phenomenon of people using these images in this way? So inappropriate, to say the least.
On the short term, we have to condemn it forcibly, to call others, influencers, to condemn it. We do it. And on the mid and long term, education, education, and education.
Have you ever had to have a conversation with someone who was a Holocaust denier or who's trivialized the Holocaust in this way, as you said? Have you ever had?
Not personally, but we see that happening mostly outside of Israel, although there were even brief events even in Israel. The key here is to make those that make those comparisons to make them feel uncomfortable and exclude them from serious circles of debate.
So what you mentioned the things that are important to you for Yad Vashem and how you see leading Yad Vashem into the future. In an ideal world, what do you see Yad Vashem being for Israel and really for the world?
Well, I think that Yad Vashem obviously is a tool. It's a tool to strengthen and Holocaust remembrance. It is in many levels. One level is to very present these days, very relevant these days, as I said, is to combat anti-Semitism. I think whoever sees what terrible damage anti-Semitism caused not only to the Jewish people, but to the entire world. Germany created devastation all over the world because of their anti-Semitic lunacy and designs. I hope that that can help combat anti-Semitism all over the world. The second thing is, probably it's sad to say it, but in a period in which there are divisions between Jews, between Israeli Jews and diaspora Jews, and even inside each section, each sector, divisions caused by politics and even by religion. I think that Holocaust remembrance and the legacy of the Shoah can be a unifying factor for the Jewish people, and it can enhance Jewish sentiment, and in that sense, from the depths of the catastrophe that occurred to our people, help us to foster Judaism and the continuity of the Jewish people.
That's a lovely sentiment, and I definitely hope that proves to be true.
If you allow me, Teisha, I would also like to see the remembrance and the legacies of the Holocaust, the relevance of the Holocaust at the forefront of the diplomatic international agenda. I think that with all due respect to the Holocaust International Remembrance Day, I think that it has to be remembered every single day. When we see genocidal regimes calling, fanatic fundamentalist regimes calling for the annihilation of Israel and other things, the legacy of the Holocaust should be present 365 days on the international agenda, and not only in the January 27th. That's our mission.
Well, thank you so much, Dani. And I also want to have people go to your website because there are so many resources. If people are looking for a meaningful way to mark International Holocaust Remembrance Day, Yad Vashem has resources on the website. And as Dani mentioned, if you are a survivor, if you know of a Holocaust survivor, and you can fill out a page of testimony to add to the millions of pages that are already at Yad Vashem, it is significant.
Indeed. And, we need every single Jew, every single decent person to feel a partner of Yad Vashem to help us fulfill our mission. Teisha, in Pesach, we say in the Haggadah of Passover, in every generation has a person to see himself or herself as if he or she were liberated from Egypt. I believe that now every generation has a person to see himself or herself as he or she were personally liberated from Auschwitz, and feel, identify with the victims, with the survivors, and convey the legacy. We are now the witnesses. We will become the witnesses. The documents that we gather will become the witnesses. Educators will become the witnesses. And I think I don't use this word lightly. I think that Yad Vashem fulfills a sacred mission.
I would agree with you there. And I thank you for the work that you and your incredible team does every single day to keep this institution. It is a living memorial to the Holocaust. It is remembrance, it is education. And I truly appreciate, we all appreciate the work that you do, Dani. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Teisha, for having me. Shalom.
My pleasure. Shalom, shalom. Dani Dayan, chairman of Yad Vashem, the World Holocaust Remembrance Center in Jerusalem. We thank him so much for taking the time with us here today on JBS. And as always, many thanks to our director, Sloan Copeland, managing director, Dara Galev, technical manager, Michael Paley, our transmission manager, John McDevitt, and producer, Carol Lilienthal. And thank you for joining us here on JBS for In the News. I'm Teisha Bader. Be well.